Hello, everybody. You're listening to the Big Chill Podcast. This is episode 401. So long, Sam. Hello, Big Chillians, and welcome back to a new season of the Big Chill Podcast. I'm Frank, joined only with Eddie. So for our avid listeners, you'll know that that means Sam is no longer with us. He has gone on to greener pastures and will forever be in our hearts for the next week or so until we completely forget about him and his outrageous takes and his Arsenal optimism.
Yeah, I mean, in some respects, probably good for him, because obviously if he'd been on this episode just after they lost in the FA Cup, it would have been difficult for him to put an optimistic spin on that. Although I'm sure he would have managed. He probably would have said that's more opportunity for them to focus on the league and qualifying for the Champions League. So I'm sure there would have been an interesting take. But yeah, he hasn't died. He's just decided that he's going to focus on other areas of his life. So...
Although some listeners have said he is now dead to them. So
yeah, that's been
close.
Yeah, that's been the universal feedback. But yeah, no, we obviously, wish him all the best, and also wish that, a year, 2 years from now, he looks back on this and thinks it's one of the biggest mistakes he's ever made. So,
do we wish him all the best, or just wish him some best?
We wish him some...
Because hopefully he gets some bad things that we can talk about in the podcast and joke and laugh about him.
We wish him all the okay. How about that? I think that's probably the fair assessment. But no, yeah. And obviously we've kind of done this episode a couple of times. There's been some technical issues on our end. So his final episode has never been aired before any conspiracy theories start. There was nothing linked to whatever happened on the final episode and it not appearing, but it was just technical difficulties on our end, and we knew he was going at that point anyway. But yeah, we've had a longer holiday than expected, I guess. And I know our listeners have been desperately missing the podcast, and they'll be happy to have it back popping up in their podcast apps.
Yeah, I've had a few people reach out to me and demand where these episodes have been. And unfortunately, they've been delayed, but we are back now with a fresh season 4, just in time for NFL playoffs.
Yeah, no, in some respects, it's good timing. I guess we could call Sam the Carson Wentz, maybe, of the podcast. Is that? But it's good timing in a sense for us to make a reappearance. It's also worth noting that we will be having a greater presence on our social media in the coming weeks and months. So if you're not already following us, do follow us, the Big Chill Podcast on Instagram, the Big Chill Pod on Twitter, or you can search for our YouTube channel and follow us there. There'll be video clips from the episodes appearing more frequently than they have in the past, as that's now a lot easier for us to do. So
and also because Sam was holding us back. So another good reason. So long, Sam. Another good reason. Now we can increase our presence.
He's just really ugly, so it was hard to put out video content.
Oh, shots fired 3 minutes and 30 seconds into his final departure.
So now we've not got his ogre of a face appearing in any of the videos, so we can start putting those videos out.
Oh man.
Yeah. But, yeah.
Oh, so long, Sam. Hope you're still listening.
Yeah, just don't look in a mirror. But yeah, no, he's but yeah. So anyway, getting on to obviously the NFL playoffs starting this weekend and an interesting final week of the regular season yesterday. I don't know where exactly we should start. So maybe should we start with your beloved New York Giants, who managed to get headlines in a totally meaningless game with the amazing decision. I mean, there's only one real talking point from the game, but the decision they did back-to-back QB sneaks. But a QB sneak on a 3rd and 9 from their own 12-yard line or whatever it was.
It was about like the 6.
Yeah, just supposedly, according to Joe Judge, to give them a little bit of extra space for their punt, which they did. He viewed that as a success.
Yes. He said it succeeded. I mean, it's unbelievable on so many levels. I try not to care so much, but I can't help but be invested because I do watch all of their games, and it doesn't really affect me at a personal level, but it is really interesting to see all the responses, and he is just getting teed up, deservedly so, for all season. He's made these comments about how relentless he's going to be as a coach and how relentless the team is, and just people tearing into him about being relentless on QB sneaks and relentless about getting that 1 yard needed for a better punt. I mean, he's just getting ripped apart. And it's just amazing to me that he doesn't get that he just needs to get to the podium, say, hey, you know what? We've disappointed this season. I get it. I want it to be better. We're not. We're going to fix it. But he continues to go on these epic rants about how they're still competing, how they're still fighting. They've scored 1 touchdown in 4 games. They've lost by over 10 points their last 6 games, and that's a flattering stat because one was 11. Every other game is like 16, 18, 22, 24. I mean, these are brutal. How can you say you're still competitive? Just say we suck. I get it. We'll revamp this next year. Stop with the BS already. No one believes you. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, it's a bad look. And just sometimes that honesty from a coach, I think in any sport when you get it, when they're just trying to convince you that everything is going to plan, even when it's, going up in flames horrifically, is very frustrating from a fan perspective. But as we spoke about previously, I mean, the Giants, it's just hard to see. I know that they've got the 5th and the 9th pick in the draft, I think.
5 and
5
8.
and 8. But it's just hard to see what the real positives are within this team. I mean, it's not like 2 high draft picks are going to radically change. It doesn't seem on paper like the strongest draft around. Like sometimes, even if you look back on last year where it seemed like there were 4, maybe 5 solid QB prospects in the draft, it's difficult to see who the game-changing player is at the moment. I mean, that doesn't mean that there won't be one, but it's difficult to see the positives for the Giants right now.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to discuss too much because they're, the non-talking point of the NFL right now, at least for the next 6 weeks. But, everyone wants Joe Judge fired, and I'm actually okay with this last year because you have the 5th and the 8th pick this year. You maybe fill in some really necessary pieces with an O-line, a D-line, an edge rusher, upgrade a little bit, and then next year – either they're going to improve slightly and start to build that team, or they're going to be just as bad as they were this year, get another top 5 draft pick, get rid of Judge, get rid of Jones, and then you have a chance to bring in a good QB. You had 2 good draft picks the year before, and now you can kind of start to jumpstart that team. So I don't think it's the worst case scenario because, like you said, you're not getting a QB this draft anyway. So, it's not. I don't think it's worth getting rid of Judge and Jones, especially. I mean, you don't have a much better option right now. Give him his last year, see what happens. If he does improve, that's great. Wow, you got lucky. If he doesn't, you probably had a better chance to get someone decent next year than this year. So, I mean, I love that he called the Washington football team a clown show of an organization, and then they came in and beat him 22-7 while he attempted back-to-back QB sneaks. So the clown show is amazing.
Yeah. No, and just in general, I think the Giants have to avoid firing shots at anyone else. They obviously got really bad sort of coverage and social media reaction when they offered that free Diet Pepsi or whatever promotion they had for season ticket holders
medium soda
a couple weeks ago.
Couldn't even get the large soda. They offered season ticket holders a medium soda
in the Fan Appreciation Day. So I just think at the moment it's not the time to be taking aim at any other teams in the league. But I guess from one disaster can move on to, I guess there were 2 big disasters yesterday. I think one is the headline grabber, which is the Colts, who went in as the heaviest favorites yesterday of any team. I guess actually the Bills were slightly heavier favorites. I think they were 16-point favorites, maybe the Colts at kickoff. I think the Bills were 18 or something like that. But anyway, super heavy favorites going into a game against a team that had the week before lost 50-10, shown very few signs of life over the past few weeks, and just never turned up. I mean, genuinely having watched all of that game, if you flip that around and you had stuck the Jags in the Colts uniforms and vice versa, that game kind of went the way you expected it to, just in the total opposite. If what I just
Yeah.
said made any sense, but
Well, it's a real shame that our prediction episode will never get aired because we both predicted the Jags to beat them, so we both had that one nailed. It's unfortunate that no one will be able to hear that.
it is actually a shame. We did make some good. We did both pick the Lions against the Packers. We had that upset.
Yeah.
Overall, we both picked the Niners.
We did not pick the Jags,
We
though,
didn't know.
as we were just joking.
No, but we did actually do okay in the picks, and we'll kind of
Yeah.
sum that up as we go into the playoffs in next episode. But no, I mean they just Carson Wentz. That's as close as you could imagine to a career-ending performance. I think the only thing that saves him is just how heavily invested the Colts are in him in terms of what they gave up to get him. But I mean, that was terrible. That was one of the worst quarterback performances in a must-win game I've ever seen.
Yeah. Okay. Wentz was terrible, but you have to go past that in a must-win performance where nothing they did was good. I don't think their strategy as a team was great. They seemed to not want to run the ball in the beginning and then obviously got behind and then couldn't really run the ball, but they didn't really establish the run like they normally do. They didn't really make much of a play action. The defense, they kind of let Lawrence sit back there and throw instead of pressuring him when they know he's not great against the blitz. Like every aspect of what they went out there to do was just a failure. That was, if you're a Colts fan, you have to be really angry at your team as a whole after that performance. That's got to be so frustrating with the high hopes you have with a win in your in against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who basically have shut it down, looking at their last week's performance and thinking, yes, we couldn't ask for anything better, except we forgot to ask for the Colts to actually play.
I can't. I mean, if you were a Colts fan, you would have gone into yesterday with zero concerns. I would have just gone into if thinking, yeah, we're in the playoffs. Maybe we're not built. We're not looking as good as we have at certain times over the course of this season. I mean, but they had put in good performances in recent weeks. And Carson Wentz, he hadn't thrown an interception on the road going into yesterday, and then just looked like he was aiming for the Jags at times. But really bad performance.
I guess the stat we missed on that too was the Colts haven't beat the Jags in Jacksonville in 8 years now?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those that falls definitely into those meaningless stats categories. But yeah, no, I guess it's a little bit of
Unless maybe there's a great nightclub in Jacksonville that they all go pregame and then aren't ready for the game.
Maybe, yeah. But no, I mean, a shocker. And we did joke. I joked to you going into this week of, well, are you excited that you'll get one last chance to see Ben Roethlisberger in the playoffs? We thought that was a scenario that was almost impossible. And here we are. We're going to get to watch Ben Roethlisberger sign off. I mean, who knows? Maybe he signs off by winning the Super Bowl, but at least he's going to get to sign off with a playoff performance.
Yeah, I can't believe that they made the playoffs. Obviously, we'll get into the Sunday night win in your in game, which was an amazing second half and overtime. One of the more fun I've ever watched in a crucial final game of the season to determine who makes the playoffs. It was freaking unbelievable. But it's a disappointment. I mean, listen, it's fine. I think he kind of deserves that little victory tour. I don't see them having any chance of winning. He gets to go out saying, they won, 3 out of the last 4 or 4 out of the last 5 to make it into the playoffs. Call him dead on the field if you want, but he's still got those wins, rode off into the playoffs. Fine. But from a fan standpoint, I don't know many people who would say they'd rather watch Big Ben over Justin Herbert in a playoff game.
No, but part of me feels like I'd almost rather watch the Steelers and the Chargers, though. I know that Justin Herbert, the Chargers blow so hot and cold. We even saw that over the course of yesterday's game. They're clearly much more talented than, say, the Steelers, sorry. But I feel like they really don't deserve it because there's so much wasted ability there. The coaching is at times horrific. We've spoken about it on previous episodes with the commitment of going for it on fourth downs. There was some questionable decision making in going for it on fourth down yesterday. I also think that's probably the worst timeout I've ever seen called at the end of the game, because I think if he doesn't call the timeout, the Raiders let the clock run out.
Now, that is a heavily debated topic this morning. And what they didn't make very clear on the broadcast is the Raiders also were playing for seeding. And had they tied, they'd be the 6th seed and would be playing the Chiefs in Arrowhead. If they win, they play the Bengals in Cincinnati. If you were to ask me who would you rather play, I would much rather play the Bengals. And I know the Chiefs have their issues on offense or defense, but the Chiefs are still a Super Bowl winning team of the past 2 years, Super Bowl or AFC championship team, and know what they're doing in playoff time. I would much rather face the Bengals, who are young and inexperienced. That supposedly was known on the sidelines. And a lot of what's being said, for instance, what Derek Carr said when they interviewed him was, did that timeout change the call? And he said, of course, yes, it changed the call. But then his next statement that gets cut off every time is, we wanted to win that game no matter what. So I don't think they would. I think what made them kick the field goal was the fact they got the first down, not that he called the timeout. Had they run that play and they got lucky and stopped them, then I think they either punt or kneel on it and run the timeout, because they don't want to kick a 56-yarder and have it be blocked and run back in some crazy Iron Bowl scenario like Auburn. But I think they knew that if they got a first down, they have a chance to win the game and go to Cincinnati over Kansas City. So I don't think that timeout sealed their fate. I think it was kind of dumb, but his reasoning was he wanted to put out the best defense to not give them those 10 yards, but then they got him anyway. So what's the difference?
Yeah, I think it's a kind of indefensible timeout, but it's a big mystery, and obviously there's an element there. There was Raiders players after the game saying that they wouldn't have kicked the field goal had it not been for the timeout. There you could just be trolling some of your competition a little bit, but yeah, I think you're in a situation where you're not going to get the ball back. Certainly not in a position to win the game. Like, best case scenario, you're getting it deep in your own half with a handful of seconds left. I think you just let the clock run out. There's very few scenarios where you call the timeout. Is it going to make that much of a? Obviously, it didn't make any difference trying to get the right defense on the field, but I don't know. But
I think the bigger mistake on his part, a bigger coaching blunder, is the fact that the Raiders got that ball back. And I think if you're on the Chargers sideline, you kind of have to feel that they're playing not to lose at that point. And they were so timid in that defense. And like we say, week in and week out, I don't get how teams just let other teams drive down the field with, a minute remaining. And then once they got to about, their 35 or 40, it was clear they were just going to run the ball. And that the Raiders coach has said, we weren't going to throw. We were just going to run every play. And they still didn't even have, 8, 9, 10 in the box. Load it up. They're going to run. Stop the run. They just want to run the clock out and maybe get close enough to kick a field goal. If they get close, they're not going to, fake and potentially throw a ball and get sacked and fumbled and things like that. They're just terrible defensively when they need to be. And that it was disappointing. I thought the Chargers had that game, and that would have been a cool win. But
also
good for the Raiders.
They've had an inability to stop the run all season, right? And then in the end, that's kind of come back to haunt them. So in a way, a fitting way for their season to end. But speaking of a team whose season will not be ending this week, the Niners, with a coming back from what looked like they were dead and buried at 17 points down. I have to admit, I thought no hope. But Jimmy G put in one of the best second half performances of his career. I think that's saying Carson
minus the pick.
yeah. Although I mean, he was forcing that one.
Minus the pick that almost blew it.
He was forcing that one a little bit, but it was poor decision making, but it wasn't a horrific throw, if you see what I mean. That is,
yeah. And he kind of got screwed on the no call
yes,
with the hit to the helmet,
yes, which would have bailed him out because it didn't really impact what actually happened. But you would expect it to be called when you see a quarterback get smacked in the head. But yeah, I mean, I think you have Carson Wentz, who has an almost career-ending performance yesterday. Jimmy G, that's a career-saving performance. I mean, that completely changes his image as a quarterback. To come out with this injured thumb, really look like it's affecting him in the first half, and then put together. And look, he made some good throws. He was also helped out by Deebo Samuel being amazing at times, and the yards after catch that he was able to put together. But they went from looking certain to be eliminated to suddenly having a live playoff hope.
Yeah, I think Jimmy G's thumb injury, according to him, was "fuck it, it hurts," is what he told the media. So obviously, it wasn't feeling well, and he pushed through, and it was an impressive comeback. I did not think they were going to be able to pull that off. He played well. I'll give him that, and I've kind of always been on the Jimmy G side over the Trey Lance side, and you have to keep riding with Jimmy G here. But the real Niner savior is Deebo Samuel. He is just a savage. Like, it's unbelievable watching him. I give the Niners a lot of credit for how creative they are in getting him the ball. And part of that is kind of tongue in cheek because the way they do it is just put him in the backfield as a running back. So it's not very creative, but it is in a sense because no one else is doing that, right? No one else is taking DK Metcalf and putting them back there in 2nd and 6 and giving them an off tackle run. And maybe they should be. But it's just every which way they can get him the ball in open space and just have him, make great plays. It's awesome. And in a game where Kittle was kind of quiet most of the game, they still got so much out of him. So it'll be fun to see them in the playoffs solely for Samuel and Kittle. Have just been pretty unstoppable this year, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, and a couple of other heroes, I guess, from that performance in that. We've talked about why can't you have a kicker punt and kick field goals, and through injury, that's what the position they found themselves in. It didn't seem to go too badly there. And also then having your fullback as the holder on some pretty crucial extra points and field goal attempts. I mean, I'm not saying that holding is necessarily the toughest job in the world, but it's probably not. I'm sure your nerves are going through the roof having to hold on a game-tying extra point or, a crucial field goal when it's not something you've been doing every day in practice for the last few years.
Yeah, and for those who weren't watching, the punter got hurt for the Niners, and Robbie Gould had to step in and punt, who's their place kicker. And he had a pretty crucial punt in that fourth quarter. He put him back on, I think, the 9 or 10-yard line. It was a really nice punt. So that was huge that he could step up. Little Penn State alum shout out.
I heard actually
before I even went there. That's crazy how old he is.
Well, I actually heard that we've supposed to. A friend of the podcast, Furlong, was telling me that we should get Dane, who we've previously had on back on the podcast to tell his Robbie Gould story because supposedly he interviewed him.
Yeah, he interviewed him for a. Oh God, what was the course? It's one of those courses that they make athletes take that isn't a real course, but it's just really fun and you actually enjoy taking it. It was like a sports journalism, but not really like 101, like intro to sports relations or sports media. And you had to go out and interview a former Penn State person, and he interviewed Robbie Gould. Yeah. Maybe we can recreate it. We'll get Dane and Robbie Gould back, and we'll ask the same questions and see what the answers are.
15 years on or whatever it is. Yeah, see how well they can remember the experience. But now, something for us to cover in the future. But no, it was. I've seen that a lot of people have felt like this NFL season is just too long. So the first season with 18 weeks, I can kind of get that, kind of understand it. At the same time, I think that's more just due to the situation in the world and the pandemic and the fact that games have been moved and teams have had to call up players who they normally wouldn't have had, and sort of life isn't maybe as smooth as it normally is for everyone. And so you're not enjoying the NFL season as much as you maybe would under normal circumstances. But they weren't the most exciting slate of games yesterday, but in the end, they got a few key finishes that will sort of leave a positive memory. I mean, that Raiders Chargers game will probably be what everyone always thinks about. It'll be the regular season game that probably most people think about when they just think about this season. So to have that be the way that they sign off the ending in the Rams-Niners game, the Colts upset. I think the Ravens-Steelers game was awful, but in the end, it helped the Steelers get through. But that was not a good game. And I was surprised to see the Patriots lose, even though that game became less meaningful for them after the Colts lost, because it meant that from a seeding perspective, they kind of had less to worry about in terms of where they finished. But surprised to see them lose to the Dolphins, even if the Dolphins have kind of had their number a little bit in recent seasons.
Yeah, maybe it was a little long, but just to set up that final game, that Raiders-Chargers game in that fashion, it was a playoff game, right? It's technically a pre-playoff win and you're in game. And if that's what the playoffs are like, then it's going to be a lot of fun in the playoffs, because that game was really fun to watch. And I am sad that Herbert won't be in the playoffs, because he was just throwing rockets out there. He has got a cannon for an arm. And it's unfortunate that he won't have the chance. The podcast that will never get released, we discussed how you have this new crop of quarterbacks coming into the fold and starting to get some playoff experience and build their resumes. And it's unfortunate that he had another great year, but won't have that chance to kind of get some playoff experience under his belt and come that close and, two epic drives and still not make it. But
he is giving me
do so much.
He is giving me some serious Phillip Rivers 2.0 vibes, though. Not in terms of personality, obviously. There's not the anger and rage coming out of him and the facial expressions that you got from Phillip Rivers, but just a little bit in terms of there's some really bad throws, but then an ability to bail out the team on a 4th and 12 or by just,
4th and 22.
Sure, by just gunning the ball into triple coverage. But it's obviously an easy comparison to make with them both being at the Chargers, but there is just that feeling where yes, he's going to put in some incredible performances, and it's obviously very early in his career to make this judgment, but you just worry that maybe there's an inability to put in a complete performance that you need to really win big games.
Or maybe like Rivers, the rest of his team around him, including his coaching staff, is just shit. You can only do so much.
Yeah, I mean, they look questionable coaching. And hey, I also think the Raiders are particularly lucky because some of their defensive play calling in the back end of that game, particularly on, a touchdown, kind of similar. Not the game tying touchdown where he just threw that into triple coverage, okay, good play in a sense, but on the previous touchdown to kind of allow a player to sort of be pretty open in the end zone with 3 defensive backs in his vicinity not doing a lot. I think there'd be a lot more scrutiny and being applied to that had they then got knocked out. So you kind of forget about what the Raiders did wrong towards the end of the game because they ended up winning, and it's so much of a results-based, analysis.
Yeah, I mean, the Raiders didn't play particularly well that game. I mean, they had over 100 yards less offense. Carr didn't really throw the ball that great. Their defense was pretty Swiss cheese towards the end of that game. I don't think they'll go very far in the playoffs. It is pretty amazing what the interim coach has done to kind of right that ship in a season where everyone kind of thought they were completely finished. So I give him credit for that. And it probably will keep his job. I mean, I would be surprised now if they fire him after he took the team into what it was and made it into the playoffs is pretty impressive. So good for him.
How do you think Gruden feels? Do you think if you're Gruden, are you upset? Do you have that happen to you, and then you hope that they just burn? Or is there part of you that thinks I had a hand to play in this team making the playoffs, and I kind of look better out of the eventual success that they've had?
Oh, I think the latter for sure. I have a feeling Gruden thinks of himself very highly, and he's probably saying that was the exact team I put together. In fact, I didn't even want Ruggs on the team. That's what he's saying.
Do you think he fired off some interesting emails during and post game?
Who knows? We might see him next year.
Yeah, obviously we'll do our playoff preview next week, but I guess that's most of the talking points from, there were so many games that really there was nothing up for grabs. I guess we could talk a little bit about the Chiefs on Saturday night, which feels like ages ago. They did not look particularly good in that game, and were lucky to win. If it had it not been for that fumble recovery for a touchdown, I don't think they win that game. I mean, they could have been down 2 scores. That's such a massive swing in terms of the situation in the game and the momentum. But they did not look particularly good, which slight cause for concern heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, slight concern. Again, I think the Chiefs are just that team where once the playoffs start, they might just click. I don't know. It wasn't great. Mahomes didn't look sharp, but at the same time, his receivers dropped a lot of balls and were running the wrong routes, which that's the part that worries me, is if you don't have Tyreek Hill on the field, you're relying on Hardman and Pringle, and for most of the game, Pringle looked like he had his own playbook that was different from everyone else on the team. There was at least 4 or 5 plays that Mahomes kind of gave him the look like, what the hell are you doing? You're running the completely wrong route. So that's worrying. If Tyreek Hill can't go or has to sit out some sort of the game, whether your backups know what the hell's going on. But again, I think without Tyreek Hill, that's a completely different team. So chalk some of that up to him being sidelined, 94% of the game. I think he had like 6 plays.
But I mean, he had, with the injury that he had, there's a good chance he's certainly not fully healthy going into next week. So,
yeah.
And in the end, the playoff, it's a fairly straightforward, you would think, first round matchup for them. But still, it's, there's a possibility that Tyreek Hill is not, healthy at any point for the remainder of the season now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're getting lucky in playing the Steelers where they only have to score 7 points to beat them. So
you never know. Maybe the Steelers are going to be the team of destiny this year. Maybe this is how Big Ben, this is how he signs off. I do find, I know we kind of talked about it in an episode, obviously, that will never appear, but I do find it interesting just how we're all supposed to think what a great guy this is, what an incredible member of the kind of Pittsburgh community he's been over the course of his career. And I'm not saying that his reputation has to be forever tarnished by mistakes that he's made, or that those should always be the first things that are brought up when discussing Ben Roethlisberger, but they are not being brought up at all. And I do find that very interesting, that we're just completely forgetting about some pretty controversial moments in his past and just going, what a stand-up guy. Ben Roethlisberger, never put a foot wrong, always been just a pillar of the community and an inspiration to young people everywhere.
Yeah. That was about what now, 11 years ago? So I guess that's about the time it takes for people to forget. I think that was late 2000s. Shout out to Sam, 2000s.
Oh,
One good thing with Sam being gone is you never have to hear the freaking word naughties again.
2 shots fired at Sam on this episode. But,
take your naughties and shove them, Sam.
Yeah. But no, he no, look, and people have, I think as a society at times, right, we don't give people the opportunity to change and improve and grow. And I think in particular when you're talking about people making very big mistakes very early in their lives, there has to be an opportunity there for him to become a better person and redeem himself. So I'm not saying as if he isn't a good person or that, that should be the first thing that's brought up. But I do think still, when you are talking about his career, it is probably worth mentioning. He's also saved a little bit, right? Because the news cycle of horrible things that are done by NFL players is so fast. And on the scale of bad things that have been done by NFL players in the last 16 years, this isn't that high. So he's kind of he's saved a little bit by the company he keeps. And so,
Yeah. And I mean, you're right. I mean, and even in I don't want to say like a spin on it, but it is maybe an example of people do things when they're young, and maybe it seems like he regretted it, obviously, and tried to better himself and became more involved in the community and did a lot for the city of Pittsburgh afterwards, that it is evidence of this, let's not cancel everyone immediately and get them out of here, because maybe they can redeem themselves and maybe they can learn from their lessons. And if anything, this is an example of it, and maybe it should be brought up. Like, look, he did have some troubles. He had a troubled past when he was younger, coming into the league, and seemed to have righted that ship and ended up doing a lot for the community, and got an outpouring of affection on his final home game where people gave him a standing ovation for about an hour.
No, 100%. And I don't want to come across as someone who's upset by cancel culture. I think sometimes people do deserve to be canceled. At the same time, I do think there's this weird logic behind it, which is we want everyone to become more knowledgeable and improve and become better people. But then when you've made a mistake,
but you don't get that chance.
But then when you've made a mistake, it's like, no, you cannot become a better person. We have already decided who you are, and it would be an insult to us if you became a better person now, and we had to acknowledge the fact that you have improved. Like, I do think there's a weird, it's impossible to reconcile those two different approaches. And look, some people do some things so horrible that they shouldn't have the opportunity to prove that they're better. But in his case, he did. But it's just, I do think it just bothers me slightly when people are talking about him as if there's never been an issue. And it's a small footnote, but one that should be addressed. And as you're right, it could be framed in a way of, hey, what a turnaround. Like, we're getting to the end of his career and talking about someone who has been a big contributor to his community, and he started off in a pretty bad way. So there is an opportunity to turn yourself around as a professional athlete or just as a young person in general.
Hey, Eddie, speaking of cancel culture, how about Novak Djokovic?
Yeah, at another episode that didn't get aired, obviously we went into this, but yeah, the Australian courts have granted him access. I'm sure he'll probably go on to win the Australian Open now. I mean, in some respects, if you're the ATP Tour and you're the Australian Open organizers, this must almost be a dream come true, because it just adds an extra level of interest. Not that Novak Djokovic needs many reasons for people to pay more attention to him when he's playing tennis, but this is just a great talking point now, where as soon as you get to the quarterfinals or further and Novak Djokovic is involved, and that there are going to be some other tennis players on the tour who are going to take some shots at him over the course of this tournament. Andy Murray in particular, because Andy Murray is one of the players who's the most outspoken when it's come to, over the last 18 months, when it's come to Novak Djokovic and his anti-vax position. But just in general, Andy Murray's always happy to have a comment on something he doesn't think is right. But so, I actually haven't, it would be, if they could have the opportunity to play against each other, I think that would be must-watch TV.
Speaking of comments, what has the outspoken Australian said about this? Anything?
Oh, Kyrgios?
I was
trying to figure out who it looks like. Is this someone we know? And then it was like, oh, no, Kyrgios. Well, actually, he's come out. He's kind of defended Djokovic to a degree. He came out and said, look, I definitely believe in taking action. I got vaccinated because of others and for my mother's health. But how we are handling Novak's situation is bad, really bad. Like these memes headlines, this is one of our great champions. But at the end of the day, he is a human. do better. So,
wow, taking the high road now.
yeah.
Talk about growth. Talk about growth from an athlete.
Yeah, that's a real turnaround. But no, it will be interesting to see. And obviously that's kicking off next week. And I don't agree with Novak Djokovic's vaccine position. He's already had major issues, like when he organized a tennis tournament in Serbia back at the beginning of the pandemic, and then it just turned into a super spreader event, including one of his good friends' pregnant wives getting COVID at the time. So he's not made smart decisions. He's a little bit of a kook when it comes to his own health. I know that he attributes so much of his own ability to overcome early in his career. He was plagued by injuries, and then this sort of semi quack of a Serbian doctor who was friends with his parents got him to switch his diet and his approach to medicine. And since then, he's basically not suffered from any injuries and been able to put together this incredible career. Now, obviously, from a dietary standpoint, what he's doing is working. But as we've also discussed before, some of his beliefs include the fact that he thinks you can clean polluted water just through positive thinking and power of mind. So there's times
which you have yet to prove otherwise.
This is true.
So
this is true. Yeah. And I don't, I guess that's always the brilliant thing about having something where you say it's all about positive thought, because his counter to that would be, if I tried to do it with my own mind, but I don't really believe in it being possible, then the argument would be, well, that's why it hasn't worked. You have to be a true believer. And if you're not, well, then you can't do it. But, each to their own. I'm sure it's made him a more popular figure in some. I did see Nigel Farage went and visited, because Novak Djokovic's family have a restaurant in Belgrade, I think, but certainly in Serbia, but I think it's in Belgrade, where they have most of Novak Djokovic's trophies and prizes and awards up on display in the kind of entry of the restaurant. So you can kind of go and see the Wimbledon trophy, US Open trophy, and stuff like that. Kind of cool.
That's cool.
Yes, but Nigel Farage, who people are unfamiliar, was a big Brexit, British independence politician. That was the defining aspect of his career. I think a lot of people would think of him as being, on the extreme right on certain political topics, and occasionally racist, let's say at best xenophobic. But I saw that he's been in the anti-vax community as well. He went and visited Novak Djokovic's family's restaurant in Belgrade, which I did see Andy Murray said, I hope that when you turned up, you told all of them that you don't think Eastern Europeans are really people. But so, but look, it will. It's interesting to see. And I mean, it is helped by the fact that, his main competition, Nadal and Federer, are very quiet. I've seen they've made some comments when they've been asked about it, but for the most part, they are people who try and avoid headlines. So he's not as if he's had the tennis world really attacking him throughout this process.
Yeah. And I'm sure he's favorite, right?
He certainly was. But yeah, I mean,
it's just impressive that I was surprised they turned around and accepted the visa after those terrible conditions he was left in a hotel room with his cell phone.
Yeah, no, I mean, how did he survive? But no, he is favorite. He is 5-4 favorite. Medvedev is second favorite. Zverev is third favorite. And then you have Nadal, Tsitsipas, Sinner. Yeah. Andy Murray 40-1. That would be an interesting matchup if that happened. Kyrgios way down at 100-1. Now, Sam's gone, but we still do get content from some people. Had a little bit of content from Vasilis this weekend. Not in the sense that no great stories. However, he was talking about being proposition.
Wait, real quick for all our new season listeners.
Yeah.
We need to get like a little tagline for what Vasilis is.
No.
Your quirky neighborhood Greek friend or something.
I think he's impossible to define in only a handful of words.
Yes.
So, the only way to get to know Vasilis is to get to know him. There's no, when I have to introduce him to new people, there's no way to sum up. You never know what he's going to say, what his opinion's going to be on something. But
what he's going to do, where he's going to go, how he's going to do something when he gets there.
Yeah. But he was.
One thing you can nail, he loves to eat, I guess.
So yesterday, he is convinced at the bar that we go and watch the NFL at on a Sunday, he is convinced that he can eat 100 wings. And yesterday, he went into it saying that he was probably going to eat 100. And then after he ate his first batch,
What's a batch?
He orders them in 12s by 12s. He could order them in any number. Like, it's not as if it's a set. You can look at.
He's a traditional dozen guy.
Yeah, exactly. He's old school. But he ate 36 in the end, but he just said he wasn't up to it. He just didn't have it. So
I love that. I'm going to eat 100 wings. I don't feel like it anymore.
So he said next week. He said I think he was a little hungover.
Ooh, just in time for playoffs.
Yeah, he was a little hungover, a little tired, but he said next week he'll go for it. But
now, speaking of that, real quick before you get to his quote, I did post up that picture of you, Vasilis, and fellow listener Furlong, and all three were at the bar eating wings, and I asked who could eat the most, and surprisingly, I guess people must just know Vasilis has a voracious appetite because he was voted number 1. You were voted number 2, and Furlong had about 2 votes for number 3.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think people just know. I went and ate at his restaurant on Saturday, so he was working at the time, but then he finished and he sat down to eat with us. He'd ordered like a double of a main course. He ate that. Then he ordered
a double of a main course.
Then he ordered a double of a starter that came afterwards. He was disappointed because they only gave him a regular size portion, so he got unhappy about that. Then one of the waiters came over and joked to him, like, "Oh, should I now bring some olives and stuff because you're eating your meal in reverse?" Which he didn't enjoy. He then finished eating all of this and immediately declared that he was still hungry and that he was hoping to get some wings at the bar that we were going to immediately afterwards. But
oh, it's so good.
But then when we were at that bar, he told us that the week before he'd been out on a night out, and he'd been talking to this girl, and that he started hitting on her and was pretty interested in her. And at one moment, she suggested that the two of them visit the bathroom in the bar together. To which Vasilis turned around and said, "No, I'm no longer interested in you, because if you don't have enough respect for yourself to not sleep with someone in a bar bathroom, then I want nothing to do with you." Which I thought,
oh my God, wow. The audacity.
From a guy who does horrific and disgusting things on a consistent basis. What a high horse to be on.
Wow. What was her response to that?
He didn't say, really. I can't imagine it was a good one. I wouldn't love it if someone told me that. But no, I guess just a girl that Vasilis... He'll probably have more interest in her 6 months from now, following a typical Vasilis pattern where once nothing happens,
he stalks her on Instagram,
fall in love with her once it's no longer a possibility. If she's smart, she'll do something like move to Australia, and then he'll be in love with her for the rest of his life.
Speaking of food, we routinely update the chicken sandwich wars, and I have some chicken sandwich war content. A avid listener of our podcast, my father, decided it was his mission after hearing all our episodes on the chicken sandwich wars that he was going to go out and test all of the sandwiches and rate all of the sandwiches. So in their 4-day drive back or 3-day drive back from visiting me in Tucson to driving to New Jersey, which is a very long drive, they stopped at 3 of the fast food places, 1 each day. And then the next 2 days when they were home, he stopped at the other places. Now, I gave him some specifications that we had talked about previously, that to request that it be a fresh made sandwich and that to just be their standard sandwich. So no specialty ingredients, no like upgraded spicy chicken sandwich, just their standard chicken sandwich. So his ranking after doing the 5 is Popeyes is the clear winner. He gave it a 9 out of 10. And when I asked what is like a 9, he said that would be the equivalent to having a really good chicken sandwich in an actual restaurant. So one that you would eat in a sit-down restaurant and say, wow, that was really good. I would order that again. He said the bun was great. The chicken was a really, really big piece of chicken. It was juicy, super crispy. He said the Popeyes one was like a knockout. Next was the KFC one, which was almost as good, but the chicken just wasn't as juicy. But he emphasized that both the Popeyes and the KFC, it was like a real piece of chicken, not a fast food piece of chicken, which is interesting. Next was Burger King, which he said was very close to KFC, just a little bit below, which was, I think, the surprising one. He then said the next two were way below, and was Chick-fil-A and McDonald's. He said the McDonald's one was really bad, didn't like it at all. The Chick-fil-A, it was a smaller piece, it was a drier piece. The bun wasn't as good. He just said overall, nowhere near the Popeyes. So the company who started the chicken sandwich wars is apparently winning.
I think the Chick-fil-A ranking is probably the most surprising. I would have expected McDonald's and Burger King to be at the bottom, and I would have thought Chick-fil-A. I mean, I've had Chick-fil-A. I've always thought it was pretty decent whenever I've had it, but again, I mean, you're talking about 3 companies there where chicken is their thing. So you would have expected that they would have been higher than just the general McDonald's or Burger King, where they're just making standard fast food of all varieties. But yeah, surprising. A real knock for Chick-fil-A. But good news for Sam, I guess. It's disappointing that he's not here to get that. A win for his community.
Yes, because now London has the Popeyes, and he was excited to go try the Popeyes chicken sandwich.
Yeah. Yeah, now we'll have to get his off the podcast review.
The other follow-up I had to that was Arby's has now entered in on this new thing that they want to start, which is Arby's is now daring you to try what they call is the spiciest sandwich on the market. They're coming out Monday with the Diablo Dare sandwich, which comes in either a crispy chicken or a smoked brisket variety. It has 5 sources of heat. 1, ghost pepper jack cheese. 2, fiery hot seasoning. 3, fire roasted jalapenos. 4, Diablo barbecue sauce. And 5, a red chipotle bun. That last one is a little questionable as to how much heat a bun will provide. But Arby's is quoted as saying, it's so spicy, we had to include a free vanilla shake to cool your mouth down between bites.
I've never enjoyed eating hot food for the sake of eating hot food. Like I like spicy food, but I'm never going to I'd never eat a challenge where it was just trying to eat something hot. That doesn't sound good to me. I've also never been to Arby's, so
Arby's doesn't sound good.
No,
to me.
I've never heard good things about Arby's, but I've never been, so I don't want to knock it too much. But yeah, I don't think I'll be adding that to a list of things I need to try.
It is. It's gonna work though. I feel, because anytime you put a challenge to people, I think they will eat that up literally and try that. And also the sense, I love that marketing of we're going to provide a free vanilla shake because it's so hot. What a great move. That shake cost them 15 cents. It cost them just a tiny bit more than that medium soda at Giant Stadium costs that they offer to their fans.
Also, the heat challenge is always a good one because people really see that as you're questioning a lot of times like their manhood. It's like, oh, you don't think I can handle that heat?
Or their womanhood.
Yes. Yeah, not to but it gets people really riled up much more than a quantity does, or like it really feels as if no, I can handle that, which again I always find interesting. People will put themselves through absolute misery to just try and prove that they can eat hot food. I mean, I regularly see this even when you get curries with people. People often feel like the curry, that if they order like a chicken korma, that's like a sissy curry order, and so then they'll order something hot even though they don't really like it, but just because they're proving the point that they could eat it. I find it very weird.
Yeah, I do not like spicy food at all, and I guess I'm in the wrong region to not enjoy spicy food, which I get ridiculed for quite often. But it's just not enjoyable to me. I don't understand why you want to be in pain when you're eating. I'd rather be able to taste all components of the food, not have my tongue burnt off. I don't know. I just never been able to handle it, but I know there are people who do enjoy it and love the spicy food. We used to have those. We had a really good hot wing challenge where I grew up, and that was kind of a thing, like nothing to do on a Saturday. Let's find some idiot who wants to try the challenge and let's go do it. And we did. I watched at least 10, 12 people do it, and it never looked enjoyable. It looked absolutely miserable and disgusting, and it never ended well.
It's a shame he didn't know Vasilis back then, because you could have had him try it every Saturday. He probably just kept going back.
It's still around. If he ever comes to visit me in New Jersey, I will take him to it.
But is this the wing place? It's also a sushi place. Is it that place?
No, that's in South Jersey. That's a different place. That's a really good place. They just completely renovated their bar. No, this is Cluck You Chicken. It's pretty popular in Central Jersey.
But I also agree with you. There's times when I like hot food, spicy food, but sometimes when people are just going for a heat factor, then there's no real flavor in it. There's certainly no balance of flavors. They are just burning your tongue off. And that's when I don't get it. If you're eating spicy food and you're still getting kind of a different, you being able to taste a number of flavors within that, then that's fine. And you'll get that. A nice curry place can do a hot curry that still has that aspect. But sometimes you are just getting people whose sole purpose is to make it basically inedible. And it's a weird thought to me when you're making food. So any other big talking points? Quiet weekend in European football, with obviously the FA Cup going on in England, and some European leagues still not back. We had spoken about Bayern Munich and their match on Friday night. They were heavily affected by COVID. Basically, we're just able to put together 11 first teamers pretty much, and then a bunch of youth team players. They lost to Borussia Mönchengladbach, one of the teams further down the table, which I thought it was interesting. To me, it's where the COVID conversation becomes tough, because Bayern's defeat will likely have no impact on the outcome of who wins the Bundesliga, because they are already quite far ahead and they've looked by far and away the best team. But when you are playing a team towards the bottom of the table, that is very much an unexpected 3 points for them. And I'm kind of torn on it, because obviously the same situation could happen just through injuries or suspensions. So it's not like you have to guarantee that every team can field a full strength team before a match goes ahead. But it does feel like a scenario where Borussia Mönchengladbach have suddenly been major winners. We've seen this in other sports too, right? Particularly last season, we saw it when the Steelers really lost out because of opponents delaying games. I know that Arsenal supporters were very upset last week on Thursday when Liverpool had the League Cup semi-final postponed. And then the next day, Liverpool reopened their training ground. So it was kind of seemed like a little bit of a ploy just to get that game pushed so that they would be a little bit sort of fitter for the rearranged fixture, and then they were right back to it.
Yeah, and hopefully, you don't have any big COVID issues going into the NFL playoffs, which, everything is kind of ramping up in the U.S. now, and it'll be a shame to see these teams not at full strength or missing a key player, missing a quarterback could really affect your playoff run. So hopefully that all goes well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next week or two.
Yeah, and we're kind of spinning back around, I guess. But Fabio Capello, former England manager, Real Madrid manager, AC Milan. I mean, one of the most successful managers in European football over the last couple of decades. Also had a great career with Juventus, AC Milan, Roma. He came out and his exact quote was, "Refusing the vaccine is an act of selfishness, sorry. If the police are forced to get vaccinated, I don't see why the same rule can't be applied to players. Anyone who does not want to be vaccinated harms the company and therefore should see their wages cut." Say a strong position from Fabio Capello.
Wow, it's quite strong.
Yeah, anything else from the weekend or the last few days, or I guess the last few weeks from a listener's perspective?
No, not so much. Let's see. We watched Hawkeye, and that was decent. Sorry, Sam, you're no longer here to discuss Marvel TV shows and movies. We started watching Stay Close on Netflix, which is like it's a murder mystery, and the book takes place in Atlantic City, New Jersey, but they decided to make the show based in England. And from what I've read, people are really pissed because it like is in random parts of England, and they drive from location to location, but it's not as close as it is, even though they're fictional. It's not real places. It's fictional, but they're real landmarks, so people can recognize where they're going. And people are outraged. It does not make sense, which I don't know. It's hard to believe, but I guess people in England don't drive. That's the difference.
No, people.
Because when I looked, it's like an hour or two drive, and people were like, "No one would ever drive that." And it's like, in the States they would.
People in England do drive, but yeah, certainly the concept of regularly driving 2 hours is just because the country's not as big. I mean, that's just anywhere in Europe, but obviously the US, where things are so spread out, and driving is the primary form of transport, and it's not unusual to drive those distances. But yeah, it would be, people are not regularly kind of going places that are 2 hours away. I do find it interesting when people get really upset about geography. I mean, it's a work of fiction. I don't understand. Like,
Yeah, it's fictional places just with real backgrounds. Like,
but even if it's a real place, people will do that. You'll be watching someone and someone will talk. I've seen people complain about TV shows set or movies set in LA where the one character will be somewhere and then 25 minutes later they're in a part of LA, and so it would take you at least 2.5 hours, and that's if the traffic is good. It's like, who cares? Do you want a movie to be so grounded in reality that we have to watch the main characters get frustrated in a traffic jam for a little bit so that you feel as if it's a more accurate portrayal of what living in LA is like?
and the other one I've been watching is the new season of Curb, which started off a little slow, but it's gotten progressively better. I just watched the episode where he goes campaigning with one of the women, and I won't spoil it for everyone, but one of his like why to vote for the candidate is because he's going to outlaw people saying Happy New Year's after January 5th, which I thought was pretty funny. So unfortunately, we won't be able to wish people Happy New Year's on this podcast because we've already passed that date.
I've been watching Curb. I kind of feel as if, and I don't want it to stop because I do feel like every episode and certainly every season has these really good moments where they really get it right. But overall, I feel like the show's probably run its course and they've run out of things to, like, everyday things to complain about. Or isn't it frustrating? And now they're creating scenarios that just don't happen. And Larry David's like social awkwardness is at a degree that just is not possible. The thing I find the most frustrating about one of the premises of Curb Your Enthusiasm is the lack of interest people have in interacting with Larry David. And whilst he might be a difficult person to be around in real life, he is still a near on billionaire creator of Seinfeld. People would be very interested in speaking with him. You know what I mean? Like, that's always part of the show. The only time where they kind of ditch that is when he's quite successful with women. So he manages to land women who he would, in real life, I would say, have very little chance of getting. But
which is very similar to Seinfeld when you look at when you go back and look at the real actresses that have been portrayed as Jerry's girlfriend on the show, and you think there's no way you could get one or two of these, let alone 36 of these women.
Yeah, no, I mean, Jerry Seinfeld's girlfriends over the course of Seinfeld were just an incredible array of women. But
yeah,
that's the bit, and it would be hard because obviously the premise of the show kind of goes out the window if people are interested in Larry David and don't find him disagreeable regularly. But there is just that part where I don't know.
The only thing I was thinking about is on the show, he's portrayed as having all of this time to, like go to the cleaners, pick something up, then go back to the cleaners, then go to dinner. Then I can't imagine Larry David has more than 2 to 3 hours of free time in his day. I mean, he's constantly. I mean, he's writing Curb and things. I mean, he's writing TV shows. He's probably doing interviews all the time.
I don't think he's doing interviews all the time. And he writes Curb, but they make a season every couple of years. And for the most part, it's ad-libbed.
So you think he has that much free time?
I think
You think that's an accurate portrayal?
I think he probably has a lot of free time. The thing that I think is an inaccurate portrayal is just his total lack of help. Like, no, he's doing so much stuff.
No personal assistant.
Yeah, he's doing so much stuff himself. Now, maybe he's just a super grounded guy who has the free time and likes doing it. And also, maybe, he seems to not like, there's other, he gets really annoyed about what are, for him, very small sums of money, which is the other.
Yeah.
Now, maybe he's really like that. That is there are people out there who become worth hundreds of millions of dollars and still get upset about $50 that a friend hasn't given them. Maybe it's possible, but there are moments where you're like, I don't think you'd care too much about this $2,000 you need to spend right now. But maybe that's...
Listen, there's a good way to find this out, Eddie. We get Larry on the podcast. We ask him these questions. We talk a little about sports. He enjoys sports. We can get into some little sports topics and then also ask him what a normal day in the life of Larry David looks like.
Look, I'd love that. That would be a major coup for the podcast. I think that we might be a little bit away from there. I think, because I will say he doesn't seem to do a lot of interviews. I've seen him on Rich Eisen, which is when I've seen him talk about sports quite a lot, and he seems to like going on there and talking about New York sports and just.
Oh, perfect. We're better than Rich Eisen.
I don't know if we are.
What's he got?
I actually think Rich Eisen's pretty good. I will say. And as you know, I'm a big person of hate watching or listening to shows. Rich Eisen's one I actually enjoy his takes, and he's not someone who zags just for the sake of zagging, but he does consistently have opinions that differ from most of the mainstream. So I have that as a little Rich Eisen shout out, and maybe he listens to this and really appreciates that compliment from a podcast that I'm sure he has the utmost respect for.
Well, Rich, if you're listening, we have finally gotten rid of Sam, who was so hideous we couldn't put on screen, and we'd be really happy to have you be the third co-host of the Big Chill podcast. And we'd be happy to put you on screen with us.
Oh, so I mean, that's kind of, I'm not sure how much of a compliment that was to his appearance, but
we'd love to have your face be the face of our podcast. Better?
Oh, look, if he wants to come on and rebrand this totally as the Rich Eisen podcast, I'm fine with that. And we'll just be, I mean, he already has his group of people around him, but I'm happy to join.
No, listen, it would be the Big Chill podcast presents Rich Eisen, maybe at most.
Presents
Rich Eisen? I wouldn't be willing to switch and make it the Rich Eisen podcast.
But we wouldn't be the Big Chill podcast presented by. We presents Rich Eisen. It's just
no, we present Rich Eisen. Like we have his face just on the screen.
Okay, it's an interesting bit of branding. But yeah, we'll see if that becomes an issue a bridge we have to cross further down the road.
All right, with that, I guess I'll talk to you later this week when we make our NFL playoff predictions.
Yeah.
All right. Cheerio.
Cheerio.